Hi, I'm Ron Nutter, and this is another edition of Tech Bites with Ron Nutter. This time I'm going to show you how to use the Caavo 4K HD to handle all your HDMI ports. And that starts now. Well, we talked in the last video, and I mentioned that I was in the process of waiting for my Caavo 4K to arrive. And let's see if we can switch over here now and make that work. Technology does work once in a while. So it's, install later. Sorry, Ecamm Live was thinking it was wanting to install something, so I kind of had to told it, no, we're going to do this later. The last time that I did the video, this is one of the graphics that I showed you. It's a very good graphic from Caavo showing how everything ties in. But as they say, but wait, there's more. Through the miracle of shipping, there's my Caavo 4K. This is kind of, there we go. I'll tilt it down so it doesn't see there. Now, this is what it looks like. This is the bamboo cover. And I have yet to put the cover on because I'm still in the process of getting everything put in. So I'm going to take off the cover and watch it fall to the floor. Now, this is one of the first things that caught my eye. And I'm going to tilt it down so you can see a little better view of it. This is the cable management that comes into the back. And this was one of the best ideas that they could have put in because, as we all know, the more HDMI devices you get, you're going to need cable management. And I need to go through with some Velcro strips and kind of straighten up some of my cabling. But that'll happen once I get this fully online. Now, what you can see, and I'm going to read kind of, well, here, I'll see it, let you see it in the orientation that I would normally use it in. Okay, helps. I'm looking at one way near it. Power will go in here. You've got the infrared port. Now, infrared you may only need if your devices are inside a closed cabinet. Now, I went ahead and used the IR blaster on mine simply because I've got the TV on top of the cabinet, and it's an open cabinet, but I've got everything still sitting below it. So I wanted to make sure that the TV was getting the signal, and so far it seems to be fine. So I'm not going to question how it works. You've got two IR ports in here. It's got a network port, and then the port called out is the one that's going to go to your TV, and then you've got not one, not four, you've got 8 inputs. And by the time I get done, I'm probably going to have all 8 in use. It was pretty straightforward to set up. You get a one-page card, is the lack of a better phrase, to get this up and running. And I will tell you 2 things. Oh, I've already managed to scratch the plastic. Oh, well. I hooked up the network connection. I hooked up the output to the TV. And initially I started with the Roku. And you're going to see the instructions in the show notes, what I went through getting the Roku up and running. And I started out, well, port 1, going to port 8. I haven't even thought about using the USB ports yet. And it's just a matter of following simple on-screen instructions. Now, if you are doing this all brand new and you've not set up your Roku or whatever streaming device you want to use, do that first. Don't plug it into Caavo and then try to set up, because when you're going through the initialization process, Caavo puts up like a small window that you see the image out of it, and that's going to be very hard to read what's going on. I have run into one little quirk, and I wish I'd found, this is not a criticism of Caavo, I wish I would have found the supported items guide, because I've got an Amazon Fire TV Gen 1. That's when they only made just the square boxes and not before they got into the dongles and stuff. I can get the Gen 1 to work on here, but you basically get remote control, and that's it. It can't do what Caavo refers to as the deep linking, to where you will link it into Caavo. So if you say, go play The Sound of Music, it's going to look across the devices on there and see which one it's got Sound of Music available to it. And I think there's probably a way where you can prioritize that. And this is something that to be honest, at the time I'm doing this video, I've only had the device for, this is going on day 4. And it's been it's a growing and a learning process. I've already got it tied into Alexa. The commands are fairly straightforward. I hadn't gotten real fancy yet because when I ran into the problem with the Amazon Fire TV, that I had to fall back and I had to work support a little bit. So that was all pretty much done by email. And once that we each understood what the other was going for, that's when I found that the Amazon Fire Gen 1 it's one of those yeah buts. It'll work, but, and right now I can't justify getting the new Amazon Fire Cube because there's some duplicity of functions that I just really don't want to spend that much at this point, to be honest, especially when I'm looking to have to get, because of these videos, a network AV receiver, because that all can tie into this well too. And basically, you will take when you go to a network AV receiver, you'll take from the output here, that goes to your network AV receiver input, and then the AV receiver output goes to your TV. Get confused? Trust me, go to the diagram, you'll see that. The impressive thing, let me reach down here and get this lid because I don't want to roll over that. I mean, it's a very well manufactured lid, very quality. There's really, it didn't seem to have any problems. You can get other colors, so if bamboo is not your thing, and trust me, with where this is going to be, I don't know that's going to be a problem. But if you don't like bamboo, there are other colors. Now, when you go to the website, you will see a price of $400, and for some that may be a showstopper. But when I looked at the cost of getting an HDMI switcher, which all it would have done was added me more inputs, that would have gotten me yet another remote, yet another point of failure, because then you got to figure out, if things don't want to switch, then you got to, why it's not wanting to do that. Then you've got to figure out what, and remember what devices are on there, because it then becomes very complicated. So the Caavo is very much it makes a lot of sense at that point. I did find it through an ad that they ran on Facebook, of all places. I normally dismiss the ads. Saw one, so instead of the $400, I got it for $200. So they do run it on special. You just have to go to the site, or you have to see an ad. So I got this for $200. And at $400, I was really having to think about it, because with the other receivers and stuff that I'm looking to have to get, a network AV receiver, well, I'm looking at least $300 for that. So I was just trying to keep things manageable. It has been very interesting. Actually, the one negative I've had is the Amazon Fire TV. It's a Gen 1 box. Okay, it's probably approaching, I won't say 10 years, but it's knocking the door at that. I was impressed that when it initially did its setup, it first looked to see what it could find about the TV. It correctly identified the model that I had, and I've had no problems with that. So from the Caavo remote, and you'll see its little lights blinking right now. That's because the mothership is unplugged and it's not happy about that. You can do everything from here. Now, so when I first started up and had just the Roku on here, I had the TV remote, I had the Roku, and technically this, but we won't count this because that's a little bit different. So I had 2 remotes. Once I turned on the Amazon Echo interconnection or skill, I can do it all by voice. Now, the voice I'm still learning how to do. I haven't got real fancy yet, and this is where this is I mean, it's a very sophisticated product. Don't get me wrong. And to their credit, I mean, you can see everything that it has. So that's, there's going to be a learning curve. There is good information available with how this all is going to work, and it's simply going to take some experimentation. Now, the thing I'm interested to try, and I haven't had a chance, I got it, hopefully I'll have some time by next weekend, I'm going to see if I can get Cortana to talk to Echo And then technically I can control this via Cortana. Now that's going to mean about a triple jump, because when you go and talk to this from Echo, you'll say Echo ask Caavo to, and then the command. And it is reasonably responsive. I had one period of time where the commands were not working right, and that was back when I had the Gen 1 Amazon Fire. So I'm not going to hold that against Caavo, because you can only go so far back in technology, and there's probably APIs that the Gen 1 doesn't have available. There, in the case of the Amazon Fire, and I've still got my NVIDIA Shield and the Apple TV to tie in, and Apple TV is another one. If you don't have the Gen 4 Apple TV, you will have, and I'm going to use air quotes here, limited functionality. And for those that are listening on the podcast, please bear with me, because there's some of the visuals that I haven't been able to translate real well to where you can get a feel for what's going on. But most of what I'm describing, I think you've been able to follow. So I mean, if you have an older, not Amazon Fire, but Apple TV, and I've got a Gen 1, guys, I didn't even try that one. I'm anxious to see how that works. So I will have 4 different ones out there. I've got my Sony Blu-ray I'm still going to tie in. And I'm having mixed thoughts about putting on an additional DVD player, because I have hit some problems where the Blu-ray player doesn't like some of the DVDs. But yet if I put it in a DVD player, I'm fine. So I'm looking at a good candidate for that now, and just it's out of stock. And I'm just trying to do this as much on a budget I can. That's why when the Caavo, I was able to find it for $200. That made the purchase decision a lot easier. And this is something else that, not everybody's going to have 4 streaming receivers, and a partridge in a pear tree and some other things thrown in it. But depending on what you're doing, I'll be tying the Blu-ray in here. If you've got a gaming console, now you've got multiple devices that you can tie into with this. So this really, it's much more, to call it an HDMI switcher is really being disingenuous, because it's got a level of intelligence to it. So for example, with the Amazon Fire, there is a app that you need to download, and that's what gives the Caavo the chance to really tie in to the Amazon Fire. So what I've done for the time being, and I'm not wild about it, but I want to see how well it works, and then maybe I'll make the justification to go up to the Gen 3 Amazon Fire, the dongle that goes on the back of the TV, which I'm just not wild about the dongle format. I'm sorry, and that's my issue. I may go to the Cube, but then I've got yet another Alexa device, and it just, sometimes you can have too much voice control, and I'm already finding that out. So that's another thing I'll have to look at, is adding room functionality to the devices, so that when I start telling it to go and turn it on or do something with a certain device, that it knows what room I'm supposed to do it in. That's also been a naming challenge. But so far, this has been, the Caavo is really, it's almost ahead of its time. But on the other hand, how many HDMI ports do you want to have on a TV? The average person is probably not going to have more than a couple of devices. It's only, well, and granted, I've got 4 different streaming media players, and the reason I do that, is for the books that I'm working on for smart home technology. But I have encountered problems to where, say, the Sling TV app, I was having problems getting a stream on one device, and the Hallmark Channel I watch a fair amount of, but yeah, I switched to another device and it was just fine. So, it's nice to have some failover there. And that's something else. When you identify these, you'll need to create an account on Caavo, and I go through all this in the show notes. So I wanted to, not walk you through all those steps, but you can kind of see what I went through. You can tie into YouTube. You can tie into Sling. There's several of the streaming services that you can tie this into to make it a very seamless, probably for lack of a best word, experience. So the Caavo is very interesting. I mean, I'm holding it up here and it's got some weight to it, but on the other hand, you also know that it's not going to move. So you don't want this moving around, because I probably, well, unfortunately, looks like I've already scratched the plastic a little bit. I don't know how, but I did. It might have come from the factory that way. I'm not upset about that. But I've been very pleased with the Caavo. I look forward to when I do find the right AV receiver for me, and I'm looking. There's a Yamaha I'm looking at that's around 300, because I'm not going to be running sound real loud. And that's another option that you choose when you're setting up. Does the sound go directly to a TV, or do you have this plugged into an AV receiver? So at that point, you can make that change later on. That doesn't not once you have selected it and you're stuck with it. No. So that's been very good. The whole setup process has been interesting. And even when I added the Fire TV stick, and I had to use a little HDMI extender because there was going to be really not a whole lot of room in the backside of this for things to get in there. And I used the Fire Stick, the Ethernet adapter, the power supply, and then I put it on a wired connection, because any of the streaming devices, I prefer for them to have, if at all possible, a wired connection, because I just don't like putting that kind of load at this point on wireless, especially on 2.4. Don't even try it, guys. Not worth it. But it worked very well. I'm tempted to try the Fire Cube that's out there, but we'll just have to see. And Amazon, holler at me. Love to take a look at it and put it on here. But overall, this has really been, it was much more than what I expected. And I've learned with some of the technology to not expect a whole lot. But the folks at Caavo really have thought this one out. I have a feeling that we may be looking at a significant upgrade or change in features within, say sometime later this year. I'm just guessing. I don't know that for sure. But even if it didn't progress beyond its early state, this is well worth looking at. And in terms of a smart home, especially at your main TV location where you've got a lot of devices, this makes a lot of sense, because now you can have just one cable running to the TV instead of 4 or 5 or how many inputs your TV has got. And especially when some of the inputs are, say, coming in on the side or, another angle, that's additional stress on the HDMI connector. Now, you will do this in another video, but there are 2 HDMI testers that I found, and I've got both of them. They're affordable. One's 20 and one's 30. The main difference between them two is some of these devices, I expect we start seeing the HDMI A connector, which is a much smaller connector. You typically see it on video cameras and whatnot. That you want a tester that's going to test that. Both testers I found use 9-volt batteries. I'm not a fan of 9-volt batteries, because that's the one thing you generally never have spares of or have around, or gets expensive when you got to get them. That's a 9-volt battery, but I'm sure there's an electronics reason why they have to use the 9-volt instead of like 4 AA's. But, that's something we'll go over in another video that you need to think about, because especially as you get more and more HDMI devices, and I've already had a satellite receiver act up on me, and I had the provider say, "Oh, it's your TV that's the problem." Well, guys, no, it wasn't. But that's also why I don't have your service anymore. You blamed the TV, and we both missed the process, the piece in the middle, and that was the HDMI cable. It worked, kinda, but the satellite receiver would never fully boot up. Went to another cable, bing, done. It was up and running right away. So that was before I had an HDMI cable tester. Now that's, if I have a cable that's what I think is a cable acting up, then that becomes a much more straightforward process, and it's very worthwhile, because you have to look not so much at the cost of the device in terms of the tester, but what it's going to save you in troubleshooting. And I've gotten to the point I'm keeping some spare HDMI cables around just in case. And if it's a real cheap one, you probably want to stay away from it. There are some good cables from Caavo that you can get. They're a little more expensive, but the benefit they offer is that you have a little light on them, so you could tell when you selected the appropriate input on the Caavo which device is up and running. And sorry if the camera went out of focus. It'll snap back here in just a little bit when it decides to go in focus. There we go. And then it helps you trace the cable. So if you got one hooked up wrong, it's great for that. And I'm really thinking about possibly redoing all my HDMI cables, but that is something it's down the list a little bit because I've got some other things that I want to start showing you. There's a lot still to go with this. It does take a while in the setup process. It's got to get its firmware update, and it will have to reboot a couple of times. But this is not something you're going to set up in 5 minutes. It's, give yourself some time. And one thing that I found that has worked very well for me, they say to hook up all your HDMI devices at once. No, let's baby step it. Let's hook up one device, get used to that, get kind of a sense for what's going on, and then move the others over. Like I had the Roku on for several days before I started playing with the Amazon Fire. Well, probably tomorrow or the next day, I'll go to the Apple TV, and then I've got the NVIDIA Shield, and I've got other devices. I want to carefully get used to what's going on. We'll throw a whole bunch on it at once. Plus, then it could make the troubleshooting a little more of a hassle. Anyway, I've gone over a little bit what the time I intended to, but the Caavo is very worthwhile looking at. Actually, just keep an eye on the ads to find the when they do have a special price, because I found that if I didn't follow that link, there's a special link to use, so they're probably doing some sort of ad tracking, which kudos to them. They know how their ads are going to work. The $200 made a lot of difference in my decision, and this is very interesting little device. So thanks for watching the video. For those of you who've been listening on the podcast, this is basically, I'm recording this at the same time I do the video. So if you want to go back and see some of the graphics that have been involved that, maybe I didn't explain as well as I could have, and I'm working on getting better on that, you'll see the same content up on YouTube, and I'm available on iTunes, Google Podcast, TuneIn, which if you get it on TuneIn, you can put the TuneIn app on your Roku, and then you can listen to the podcast on TuneIn on your TV. So I found that one out. That one hasn't been talked about a whole lot. So this is a very worthwhile device to have, and it's just, take it one step at a time. I'll be doing some other videos on the different implementations I've done with this one, and just kind of keep you up to date, because some of the reviews that are out there are just kind of a one and done deal, and this is going to be, I want to give you a little more of what's going on. Thank you for watching the video here on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed, please consider about clicking on the subscribe button. Some people say smash, I go clicking. And then if you also want to click on the little bell notification icon, that you will get notifications when new videos are released. Supposedly YouTube has fixed that one. If you have any questions, please get out to me. I'm still playing catch up on getting the questions answered, but I do want to get everybody addressed, and this is a very worthwhile device. So thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you again soon.